Have you ever had a podcast interview go sideways? I know I have for sure. It is awkward. There's rambling tangents. Maybe a guest is completely unprepared, and it can make the conversation really difficult to navigate, but then you also feel really frustrated even promoting it. Let's avoid all of that. Today, we're going to talk through some mistakes that tend to happen and ways that you as a host can really show up better. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Successful Podcasting Unlocked. I'm your host, Alicia Galati. I'm the founder of Galati Media, which is a full-service podcast management agency where we help business owners launch and maintain lead-generating podcasts. Today's question is, how can I avoid awkward interviews? These are going to be some common mistakes that we have seen as well as clients have seen. We have almost 2,000 episodes edited under our belts, and most of those are interviews. So these are some mistakes that we've seen people make and then how you can avoid them as a host. We're going to categorize these in before the interview, during the interview, and then after the interview. First, those pre-interview mistakes. Number one, you didn't do enough research. This is definitely one that I have personally failed at, where I thought I had enough time or I thought I had enough information about the person, and I get into the conversation and I realize that I don't really know enough about this topic, or I don't know enough about this person to be able to pull the right information. This can lead to really shallow conversations, which as podcasters, we don't want shallow. We want depth to our conversations, and it also creates opportunities that get missed. So not only understanding and knowing that guest better, but then that guest not really feeling secure and excited about sharing their interview later. Second mistake in the pre-interview is vague questions. You didn't come up with anything that was to their expertise, they're generic or they're redundant, and you're not able to drill down and focus those questions. Not okay. Let's really take the most of these episodes and these conversations that we're putting our heart, soul, sweat, and tears and money into to make them the most we can. Third mistake in the pre-interview is that you overly script it. We talked about this in a previous episode where we were talking about how to pick your podcast format. And in this case, overly scripted episodes, especially during an interview, can feel really dry. They can feel really boring. And where the audience might be like, well, no, wait, I want to know more about that topic, or I want to know more about that idea. Instead, as hosts, we're moving on to the next question on our list. Be able to go with the flow a little better. Be able to adjust the direction of your conversation if and when you need to. And the last pre-interview mistake we're going to talk about today is technical glitches. This has been something that I have learned so much, and that is make sure that your microphone is pulling from the right microphone. Make sure that you are doing that quality check before you press record, that your guest sounds fantastic, that you sound fantastic, that they know where to show up. These are all things that can help you show up your best for those interviews and let your guests know that you're taking this seriously. Now for those during the interview mistakes. Number one, you talk too much. If you're dominating the conversation that is supposed to be an interview, now, not saying a co-hosted show or even one where you have a co-host friend on. No, I am interviewing someone about their expertise. They should be talking at least 60 to 75% of that conversation. I would say 75 is probably good. If you head up towards 95, that means they didn't really let you talk at all. And it's important that you're talking too. But talking too much during the interview can lead to your audience feeling like this is the Alicia show or this is the host show, not about the other person, and can leave your guest feeling like, why in the world am I here if you're going to be doing all of the talking? The second mistake is that you're interrupting your guest. Take time. Don't cut your guest off mid-sentence. This isn't a girls' night out where everybody's excited and they want to talk over each other. No, It's super disrespectful and not okay. So let's take a step back. If you have a thought, write it down. Don't just interrupt them and try to bulldoze the conversation a certain way. Write it down, and then you can take the conversation in a different direction later. If you find that they're going on tangents, that's okay. Those kinds of things can be changed during editing to ensure that the quality of the conversation is still there for your audience and your guest feels like you are actually listening. Which is number 3, that you're not actually listening and actively listening to your guest. That goes back, I think, too, to having the overly scripted episode, that if you're not more flexible in your approach, then it can come across like you actually didn't hear anything they just said. You're just trying to get your list of questions out, and that's not okay. The 4th one is, as a host, going off on tangents. Now, this is one where I think that you have to, if you do go on tangents, you have to reel it back in some type of way. How does it relate to the conversation? I also will go off on tangents, and before I even, I know my brain's going there, before I even get there, I will say, team, cut this out because what I'm about to say is for us, for me and the guest. It is not for the listeners because I know I'm going off on a tangent here. So going off on tangents is another mistake that you could possibly be making during the interview. And last, ignoring those technical issues. If you notice that your guest's earrings are clicking on their microphone, or you notice that their wrist bangles are jingling too much, or you hear the click-clack of their dog's nails across their floor, pause. Say, could you take the dog to the other room? Can you take those bracelets off? We want to make sure that we get the best quality audio for you to be able to be excited about sharing this episode. And we want you to be able to show up the best possible way. So let them know during the interview that there are issues, and that way they can fix them right away and ensure that there's no issues throughout the whole conversation. After the interview, these are some mistakes that we have definitely seen is a lack of following up with the person, not letting them know, thank you so much for being a guest. I'm so excited for your episode to go live. Maybe here's when it's going to go live. Talk about how you can cross promote with them. If you're excited to collaborate with them in the future, that follow-up is going to help you build that relationship and build that rapport with that guest to the next level. It's not just a transactional, I show up, you show up, we talk, we go on. No, this is a relationship that we're cultivating. These are collaborations that we're creating to be able to make the world a better place, maybe do business together, maybe get a referral out of it. There's so many different paths that this conversation and this relationship between a guest and a host can go that it's worth really being able to say, I'm going to follow up and I'm going to stay connected with you. Another mistake is poor editing. Leaving in those tangents, leaving in those awkward pauses or the talking over each other or the technical glitches. That can really cause an issue with the full podcast and also make the guest not as excited about sharing it. And the last mistake in the post-interview process, and I would actually say that this one starts directly after you press stop recording, and that is feedback. Ask your guest, how do you feel about that episode? Is there anything that you want to take out? Do you feel like you were able to show up best? And if you realized that maybe there were some issues during the conversation, I think that I could maybe do better next time. Maybe we could do an interview in 2 weeks, or maybe we could do an interview in a month and revisit this when you've had more time to consider the answers, or when I've had better time to show up better. I really feel like I wasn't able to show up my best today. Is there a way that we can reschedule? I would love to be able to promote you in the best possible way. Listen to their feedback. What do they have to say about the interview? And take that feedback and actually do something different with it, right? I have had so many crazy moments in interviewing. At this point, I want to say I have over 150 interviews that I have done as a podcaster. And I have been on about anywhere from 50 to 75 podcasts as a guest. So many stories and so many moments. but I want to hear your stories. So if you could send me a DM or a voice note on Instagram, I would love to know what your cringiest podcast interview or podcast guest moments were. Let's laugh together about our mistakes and really just join together. We're humans. Podcasting and interviewing are skills that we really have to develop and grow. I am not the interviewer that I was in 2018 by far, but I still have moments where I go back and I listen and I think, what were you doing, Alicia? What is going on? We've all been there. So I want to hear your stories. I want to know what you went through and any funny moments that you had where you just thought, doy, silly me. Until next time, happy podcasting.